This is for Chapter 8, Section 5, also combined with Section 6. However, Section 5 is the only section we'll be testing on. We're going to learn to calculate volume, and our essential question is, how do I find the volume of prisms, cylinders, pyramids, and cones? Let's start with prisms and cylinders. These are the things from Section 8.5 that you'll be tested on. In a prism, we look for the height and the base. It's the same thing with a cylinder. In a triangular prism, the base will always be your triangular sides, and in a rectangular prism, you can choose the base to be whatever rectangular side you'd like. In a cylinder, the base would be the circular portion. To find volume of prisms and cylinders, we have a generic formula: volume equals big B times H, which stands for the area of the base times the height. It's important to know that big B is not just the base, because in three-dimensional shapes, we need to talk about area. So if we're trying to find the volume of a prism, rectangular prism, it's area of the base, which is 5 times 2 times 3. Also the same as doing length times width times height. So when you're working with a rectangular prism, you can think of it as length times width times height. A cylinder is a little bit different because you need to find the area of the circular part, which would be the base, and then you need to multiply that by the height. So it's still area of the base times the height, but remember that the area of the base is found by doing pi r squared. So that's the area of the base times the height of the cylinder, and the height of the cylinder will be that height from one circular end to the other. A triangular prism is going to work the same way, but in a triangular prism you have to remember that your base is half the size. So for a triangular prism, it's going to be half the length times the width times the height. Or when you find the area of the base, you'll take half of the area for what would be a rectangle. Remember that area is measured in square units, and now volume is measured in cubic units. Now that we have a three-dimensional shape, you're trying to imagine how many cubic units would fit inside, meaning little cubes of the same measurement inside of your object. Find the volume of each figure to the nearest tenth, and we're going to use 3.14 for pi. A rectangular prism with a base of 2 centimeters by 5 centimeters and a height of 3 centimeters. We don't have a picture for that, but if we flip back, that looks just like the rectangular prism that we saw on the initial slide. So we find the area of the base, 2 times 5, multiply that by the height, 10 times 3, 30 centimeters cubed. It's the same as doing 2 times 5 times 3 all at once. Let's find the volume of this triangular prism. We know it's a triangular prism because 2 sides are triangles and the rest are rectangles. So we start by finding the area of the triangle. So if you look at the information, you have the height, and then you have this is the base of the triangle, which would be 12 because it matches the same as what's on the bottom. So we're going to start by taking 12 times 10 times a half because it's a triangle, and that equals 60. And then we multiply 60 by the height, and the height is between the two triangles, so we get 840 feet. We would get the same thing if we took half the length times the width times the height, and it doesn't matter what order those numbers are in. Find the volume of the figure to the nearest tenth. Now we're working with a cylinder. We find the area of the base, which would be pi r squared, because we were looking at the circular part for the base, so we have a radius, and we don't need to worry about the 12 for the base. So pi r squared would give us 16 pi, and we would multiply that by 12. Now, one of the things we talked about the other day was leaving our answer in terms of pi. You don't necessarily have to do that here. You could multiply 16 times 3.14 and use the number 50.24. That's perfectly fine. Leaving it in terms of pi tries to keep it a little more accurate, but I'm not going to be particular about that, so if you'd like to multiply first, go ahead and do that. So if we continue on and see what we end up with, it'd be 192 pi, which is equivalent to 602.9. If we multiply 50.24 times 12, we end up with 602.88, but we're rounding, so it would round the same. Let's talk about pyramids and cones. If you think about the shape of a pyramid and the shape of a cone versus a cylinder or versus a rectangular prism or triangular prism, these would fit inside of those if they were the same dimensions. So when we're putting these together, a triangular pyramid or a rectangular pyramid or square pyramid, whatever you want to call it, would have a formula of 1/3 the volume of a regular prism or triangular prism, rectangular prism. So we take 1/3 times the area of the base times the height. So we do everything the same in a pyramid, we just multiply it by 1/3 or divide by 3 at the end. The volume of a cone is the same thing. It's the volume of a cylinder, but it's 1/3 the size of a cylinder. So we multiply pi r squared for the area times the height times 1/3. So let's find the volume of the figure. I know this figure is a little bit complicated, but let's see what it's talking about. The 4 is referring to the length of this side on the bottom left. The height being measured from there is 7. 6 would be the height from the top of the pyramid straight down. So 6 is the height of our whole shape, and 4 and 7 are what we're using for our base. So because it's a triangle, we take half times 4 times 7, that's the area of the base. The rest of the formula says to multiply by 1/3 times the height. So we take our 14 from up above, which was our base area, our big B, times 6 because that's the height of the shape, times 1/3. We get up 28 centimeters cubed. Find the volume of this triangular pyramid. So now we have 5 would be our base, and then the height of that base would be 7, and the height of the whole shape would be 7. So we take half, 5 times 7 to get the area of our base. We insert 17.5 for big B, multiply by 1/3 and 7, and we get approximately 40.8 cubic inches. Find the volume of the pyramid, cone. It's like a cylinder, so we find the area of the base. So we have our radius, and then we multiply radius squared times pi to get 9 pi. If we wanted to do 9 times 3.14 right away, you would get 28.26. And we insert that into our equation for big B. We multiply by 1/3 times the height, same as the pyramids. If we're still in terms of pi, we'd get 30 pi. Once we multiply by 3.14, that value changes. If we had multiplied by 3.14 right away, we would have gotten the same value of 94.2 cubic inches. And that's it. Again, remember, you're going to practice all of these. Ultimately, you are tested on the prisms and the cylinders, so make sure that you have those mastered. Make sure your notes are filled out. You've got the left-hand side full of questions that could be answered from the material in your notes. Review your notes and complete the summary before class.